Good evening, everyone. It's Wednesday, February 8th, 2023. I'd like to begin the February regularly scheduled monthly meeting of Revera's Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board. My name is Joe Gravelisi, and I'm the chair of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board. So we'll begin with a roll call of the members. So Joe Gravelisi, present. City Council President Patrick Keefe is not here today, although he sends his regards and looks forward to joining us next time. Jan Dumas is not here. Layla?
Present.
And, Deborah Frank is not here at the moment. Anayo?
Present.
Is present. And so I'm noting here, So I'm noting here the absence of a quorum. So just for the record, and I'll note this in the meeting minutes, we won't be able to take any official votes or allocate any funds or anything of that sort today due to the lack of a quorum. Obviously, that may change if a member arrives and we reach a quorum. But that being said, in the interest of time and in the interest of getting to some of the business that we've worked on and want to proceed with the board, we'll begin with the meeting despite the absence of a quorum. So if any issues with that, we'll work through it as need be. So I did just want to start with the chair's update. I'm hoping that Zoom is working because it looks like I'm having some technological issues, which is a repeat of last time, so I'll check on that. But just a few updates from my end before we move through other pieces of the agenda on some things that we've been working on kind of at a high level for the board. So first of all, I've been working on getting new members nominated to and appointed to the board. I do see that Dean Harris is here in the attendance, which we appreciate. And I know that I've been in touch with Claire and Zerillo as well, and they've both expressed their excitement about hopefully being involved. And I know that so they went through their first city council meeting, and now they're coming up on Monday for appointment. So it would be tremendous to have them both on board, and hopefully they will be by the next meeting, and that'll allow us to continue to grow our capacity and to do more work. I've had some wonderful conversations with Council President Keefe. We just had a chance to speak in between when he assumed the title of presidency and today's meeting, and so he's definitely looking forward to being an active contributor to the work that we do, and we've had some good conversations about mutual goals and things that we can work together on. Also, I've had a chance to collaborate, and so Laura Christopher is here as well from Mass Development, and had a chance to speak about opportunities that we can find to work together and to find funding and to find some overlap there. And also have continued to been in conversation with Tom Swarovski from the city, which is another obviously important way for us to collaborate on both finding funding sources and then also finding ways that we can use those funds to go out and accomplish our goals. So as far as kind of some of the things that I've talked about with some of these partners, just make sure I have that. We've talked about really like some of the programs that. There we go. Audio. We're fixed. So some of the programs that we've seen in other communities that we've talked about, like when we had a presenter here from Chelsea, and when we had a presenter here from Mass Housing Partnership, we've looked at rental assistance programs. We've looked at affordable home ownership opportunities, the opportunity to find units that perhaps the trust could acquire and then potentially make available as affordable home ownership opportunities to low and moderate income families. We've also discussed, much like Chelsea has done, maybe home repairs, zero or low interest home repairs for folks in need, seniors, persons with disabilities, etc. So I think that there's a lot of enthusiasm for ways that the trust fund board can work together with the city council and with the city staff and with some of the nonprofit partners in the community on things that we kind of mutually agree upon to meet our goals. So those are some of the things I've kind of been working on. I've had cooking over the last month and excited to make more progress on. I am going to throw it over to you, Anayo, for just a brief update. I know that so Anayo assumed the role of treasurer at the last meeting, and is going to chair our fundraising committee. I just wanted to get a check-in from you on some of the things that you've been working on.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thanks a lot for that, and I hope everyone's having a good night. Basically, so Joe and I have been working with the city, particularly with Richard Visquet and Asante Newton, in regards to understanding the framework of the role of treasurer, things such as the financial accounting, things such as the oversight that's necessary, and I'd like to share a few of those conversation talking points. First, what was super important for me is oversight. When this was discussed, the major oversight obviously is the city council, this board itself, and an auditing department within the city that is part of the oversight stakeholders. Another important thing I wanted to know is the financial accounting, how do I get access to that information? What was it relayed to me was that Ashanti and Miguel would provide this information to me in terms of, so that each time we'd have a meeting, I'd be able to provide more summarize the financial accounting or the financial positions of the trust and any sort of flows that occur between the meetings. Another thing that was important for me is fundraising and what guidelines there are in terms of, again, transparency and accountability and of the sorts. From what it was relayed to me, there are no such hard guidelines per se, but I check in with the city solicitor, Paul Capazzi, who has the capacity to understand some of these finer points. So more or less, moving forward, I will have the ability to communicate the financial statement or summary of the board of this committee. I'll have the partnership with the folks I mentioned just now on the city, and have a better footing, an understanding of how to frame our fundraising activities. This includes private and public activities we'll be doing in the future. So those are the summarized points.
Terrific. Thank you for that. And I think Anayo's comments reinforce something that we've really talked about from the beginning here, which is that we have an ability and a willingness to get creative, to think about all different ways that we can find funding for this work, whether that be through private philanthropic support, or whether it be through city programs in partnership with the city council, through potentially ARPA funds, or for nonprofit partners in the community. And we're going to continue to pursue those opportunities to make sure that we're able to find sustainable sources of funding to carry out some of the goals that we have here for this important work. As I have done, as we've done for each of the first few meetings, as part of our sort of fact-finding process, we continue to have guest presenters to come in and offer their perspective on issues related to housing in Revere. And with that, I'm going to welcome representatives from the Revere Housing Coalition to offer some of their perspective and thoughts. I'll let them introduce themselves, and I'll have Laura take it. But I know this is a group that formed a little bit before the pandemic began, if I do recall correctly, and really trying to bring together advocates for housing, particularly affordable housing and low-income housing in the community. And Laura, you can do a better job than I ever could of explaining the work that you guys have done and the advocacy that you've done on behalf of the community. So if you wouldn't mind, we'd love for you to introduce yourself, the coalition, the work you do. And then really, it would be great to just hear your perspective and your thoughts both on sort of the lay of the land in terms of housing in Revere, but also how that should inform our work and our goal setting and our priorities. So take it away.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm sorry I can't be with you in person, but I'm grateful tonight and anytime meetings happen with the hybrid option, because I think it really bolsters participation and access. So thanks for making that happen. Excuse me. I am here, but I'm not the only Revere Housing Coalition member here tonight. I know several people kind of said they were going to come. I sent out the link, so I'm not even sure how many folks are there. It doesn't look like there's too many in the chambers. And I guess people online will identify themselves. It looks like there's not a lot of people online either. But
Might be all on you here. It might be a one-person show, Laura, but I have faith in your ability to do it.
Just that to say, I prepared to make a little presentation. Joe, you and I have been in touch. But I also always like to lift up and put out the voices of all the other folks who participate in the coalition. And, you know, I'm a reluctant leader in this moment. And if anybody does join, I just want to go on record saying I welcome them to chime in too. So Joe, can I screen share? I just made a few slides to.
Very happy to have you screen share. I just want to make sure that this will work mechanically. Okay, go for it. And if it doesn't work, please let me know.
Oh, where are my glasses? That's what I need. Now, here we go.
There we go.
Are you seeing me?
Yes, I am.
Slides?
Mm-hmm.
I can put that into slideshow mode. A little bit better. Does that look accessible-ish?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. The Revere Housing Coalition barely came together before the pandemic. I know that I got involved. The last notes I could find, the earliest notes that I could find were from late 2020. And in my mind, a couple of the things that led up to the development of the coalition are one, kind of ongoing and increasing neighborhood conversations. This is just my experience of just finding people more and more talking about what's going on with housing, talking about issues with housing, concerned about housing because of everything happening, especially in what feels like an especially accelerated way of development the last 5 years plus, right? And so more and more conversations with neighbors during the pandemic. I bet you in all y'all's neighborhoods, people were hanging out and going for walks and talking to each other. And I heard a lot of shared concern then. And also in 2019, I think it was, many of the folks who are now active in the Revere Housing Coalition were involved in some way with the Next Stop Revere Master Plan process that Mayor Arrigo kind of rolled out, and seemed to me, I wasn't really part of organizing it, but I did participate in a couple of focus groups. And it seemed to me there was a lot of participation in that. And the report that came out of that Next Stop Revere sort of, it helped me think more about ways the community might be able to come together to support more affordable housing and trying to get people to be able to stabilize our neighborhood so that people who've always lived here can keep on living here. And so those are sort of also values embraced by coalition members. A couple of notes, that we're committed to the coalition. While it's an open membership, we're committed to having Revere residents in the lead because it's about our community. We believe housing is a human right. And we really believe that housing affordability and all other kinds of shared community benefits, the profit, so to speak, in development, the highest benefit spread around the most should be really what we're aiming for in community development in the city. And that's just kind of where we're coming from. And we during the pandemic, we met on Zoom once a month. And having kind of learned some stuff from that Next Stop Revere process, when we started inviting people into meetings with some support from CHAPA, the Citizens Housing and Planning Association, offered some technical assistance. So now we had access to a Zoom account and, some translation and just really grassroots expenses like that. And people showed up and they wanted to know more about how they could participate in supporting more affordable housing. It's a pretty singular issue coalition. We want more affordable housing. We want to stop displacement. But folks feel like housing development is so complex and hard to understand, and folks feel very intimidated because of all the community development language, traditional, ways that stuff is talked about. But so folks decided together that we needed to learn more about housing and housing development and what our city was doing and how we could be a part of it. And so we started to invite people to come and talk with us, and everyone from, this was, boy, when Bob was still at development, and then tech, and now Tom. We've invited everybody to come and talk to the Revere Housing Coalition. And we've had communications opened with community developers, private developers, just trying to find our way into being positive presence in the process. And we did that by asking people to come and share information with us, whether it was specific to Revere or whether it was more concerning housing policy and community strategies for developing affordable housing. And so along the way, we mobilized for public hearings, meaning we helped each other. We shared our stories about how people related to these issues as we learned more about them, and supported each other to let our elected officials and our neighbors and other people in the community know about it. And that's just sort of the formula has come to evolve for the coalition. We learn about stuff, and then we try to talk about it, and then we try to talk externally about it in our community, and all in the interest of getting more people fighting for affordable housing, bottom line. It's very straight up. Along the way, we supported the ordinance establishing the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And thank you, Joe, and the board members, commission members, whatever the right titles are, to all of you for getting it off the ground. We're glad that was a piece of progress we got to help with. We also were on the mayor's inclusionary zoning advisory committee and learned a lot along the way with all we went through for inclusionary zoning. It was another place where we educated ourselves about it, and we went out into the community. We went to schools, we went to nonprofits, community organizations, and tried to help people understand what the inclusionary zoning proposal was all about, and we supported it. We were sorry it got voted down, but we'll keep on working for that or other things that can make change on all this. Right now we've been sort of in a bit of a reorganization stage after the IZ, trying to figure out what we want to what actions will we choose next. And so I'm happy to say that, we have a pretty active email list, but we're not having monthly meetings right now. Instead, we have a small self-selected group that anybody who's interested in joining that, should talk to me about it, of organizers who are willing to commit some part-time work to building the coalition. And I'm happy to say it is my hope that these fabulous young leaders, who are also our neighbors, will take over all the roles that I'm doing right now in the coalition. So we're kind of working on that and getting folks trained up and getting folks paid, stuff like that. But we will be doing community education. We'll be doing community organizing in the coming months. And we're around, and we can mobilize a lot of people, and we can also work with small groups. And we'll, displacement is really an urgent crisis. I think folks wanna see wanna see action there. I don't know yet what that will be for the coalition. We're concerned about, this is what I hear people talking about, we're concerned about, of course, the lack of affordable units. And now, instead of being 500 behind, we learned that we're more than 700 behind in what we need as a minimum, right? I mean, there's a lot of bad things that happen when you get under 10% of affordability, not the least of which is a lot of community impact that's not good, including that displacement stuff. So, we're also really aware that there's city elections this year. And so that's an opportunity for educating voters and hopefully educating candidates and learning about how they'll respond to these issues. So that's sort of a nutshell of where we are. I told you I'm hoping we're bringing new leadership in. We're trying to raise money. And I invite any RHC members who are here right now, if you want to jump in and add anything about RHC, we can stop sharing now, Joe. But questions, suggestions, feedback from any of you all would be very welcome.
I think we just ended the sharing. So first of all, thank you, Laura. I appreciate the overview. Also, thank you for advocating to form the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So we're grateful that that's underway and appreciate your support for that. I think what would be interesting from my perspective to hear from you, from your perspective of the people that you talk to and the conversations that you're having in the community, in the neighborhood, online, with folks that are concerned about affordable housing and about displacement, is, when you look at kind of priorities, things to focus on, urgent challenges, where a board like the Affordable Housing Trust Fund can be helpful, what's kind of top of mind for you? I know that you've followed along with our meetings. You've heard a little bit about some of what other communities have done and things that we've considered, and, would appreciate your feedback and thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'll give you my thoughts about it, without it being an official Revere Housing Coalition stand. I mean, we'll be looking for consensus on some kind of an agenda shortly. But for right now, I'll tell you that the things that I'm really hearing are, we need to fight for the folks in the community against the losses. We need to fight for a resident right to remain in this community. It makes me so sad when I see the youngsters, coming out of college and wanting to get their own apartment, or maybe even buy their first condo or something like that, and they can't. They're leaving. We're losing so much of the heart and soul that way. And our seniors, as we saw in that Globe article not too long ago, just one example of somebody who loves Revere and would have loved to have stayed in Revere, but there's not enough affordable housing. So I think that, that notion about, let's keep our residents that we've got, some kind of strategies to address that. I'll embrace any of them that people can get behind. And then the other thing is, we got to get on top of this, building affordable units. And if the way to get that done has something to do with slowing down on the high end development, some kind of, it's got to be more balanced development than what we're seeing, right? We're seeing lots and lots more higher end development, whether it's rentals or home ownership. And we're seeing rents go up and up and up, and we're not seeing development of any affordable housing so far. Something I don't know what the answers are. We hoped it would be inclusionary zoning, but that's not flying right now. So let's come up with something that does, and I think the Revere Housing Coalition will want to be a part of it.
Appreciate that. Obviously, aspirationally, we'd love to be, in the business of creating or preserving affordable units. I think that's something that, without getting out over our skis before we kind of ratify our goals and our mission statement and lay things out, I think we all kind of agree that with sustainable funding, that's something that we'd like to do. It's something that we've seen other communities do successfully. But I think we also are in the process of thinking about sort of in the shorter term, what are things that we can do that maybe will be within our financial capabilities. And so we look at things that other communities have done, like rental assistance programs, potentially for people that are in arrears, or mortgage assistance programs for people that maybe are facing a financial hardship. Or if we look at, opportunities for small 0 to low interest loans to folks that fit certain financial categories or have a disability or seniors. Different ways to do kind of what you said, Laura, which is we think about people that are here, that have been here, and what are the obstacles preventing them from being here, and obviously that could include rent increases, but it also could include, if they are homeowners, the sort of escalating cost of that. Obviously, I know every little bit helps, and everything is a priority, right? We want to do all of it. But we can't do everything. We want to kind of try to be strategic and be thoughtful. When we kind of look at some of the different things we've laid out, do you feel like there may be certain segments of kind of what I laid out, perhaps seniors or people with disabilities or low-income renters, where, for lack of a better term, what we kind of have, the limited resources that we have available, where we can marshal them, kind of where we see the greatest need and where we can do the most good. And I know that's a tough question. If we knew the answer to that, then we would just do it. But really kind of would appreciate any thoughts that you have on some of those programs that we've thought about.
I'd really love to see more data.
Mm-hmm.
The updates that I've seen from Tom, although I know he'd like to see them updated even further, as would we all, are helpful. I don't feel like I really know the data behind who we're losing. I just know we're losing. I know it's anecdotal for me. And I'd like to really understand, where are the unhoused people in Revere? I almost feel like they're hidden from us.
Yeah, actually, if you wouldn't mind, I think to continue this conversation in a thoughtful way, and I will want to turn it over to my colleagues to ask any questions they have of you. But next on our agenda will be a quick update from Tom to talk about both housing production plan for the city and anything else that he's that's come up in the last month. I would love if you're willing to keep on to stay through that and offer any your perspective as things come up. And I do see that a chat came in from Lorena Escalero. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And she said, "Thank you for the remarkable work you do, Laura. Is there a mailing list where I can sign up for RHC updates and community organizing events?"
Yes. I will put I'm going to put what I think is the Revere Housing Coalition email, and I'm also going to put my email just in case I'm not remembering it right.
Terrific. And so as you do that, I will turn over to Anayo, Leila, if you have any questions or thoughts on Laura's overview.
No, I wanna just remind to some people maybe don't know, I working with Revere Housing Coalition before. I know Laura. I know she's a hardworking. Everything related with housing. Last year she received an award from the Commonwealth for the working hard for the housing, especially on Revere. So I know if she work with us, will be a great. We have a great team for our city. So, Lord, thank you for being part of that. Thank you for your thoughts. I learned a lot from you. And no, I really appreciate it. You attending, and we see you more, and more meetings and outside and everything you needed, especially for me, to educate the community about the affordable housing and how can the people on Rivia can not have to be displacement for any, especially for the youth and from uh, the seniors that they have in this time, especially in this time, they have to move in from Rivia after a long time living here. So this is our goal, and I know it's your goal too. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. My name is Anayo Swiki. Again, I want to join in the appreciation of you and your work. When you were discussing some of the short-term and long-term goals of the Revere Housing Coalition, I was taking notes what you were saying, and I think the question I have also is very similar to what Joe had, and that he kind of framed it in what kinds of immediate solutions you would consider would be helpful for the folks, given your experience, and obviously you are so very close to the immediate the community that needs this. So my question is, in the short term, what sorts of things do you think would be helpful? I know you mentioned that you need data, and also I believe data is important as well. But some of the things that we were trying to discuss, rental assistance and the like, I tend to think that there might be pre-existing programs already available to help. I'm one of those guys that I don't believe that like to reinvent the wheel. Do you know of any sort of like programs that, for whatever they weren't able to meet your immediate needs, or clients or the folks that just didn't know about it, when they go for this help, what is it that they're not getting, or what do they need in the short term?
Thank you for the question, and it's nice to virtually meet you. There are so many examples and pilots and model legislation and templates, and there is a lot of technical assistance available. Revere is far from unique in the Commonwealth, and I'm sure everywhere else across the country, in trying to figure out this issue of affordable housing. But I do think that Revere has certain opportunities. I think we should avail ourselves of them. I'm sorry to not see more of the, economic stimulus monies that came into the city. I wish more of that could have gone towards the Affordable Housing Trust, for example, or towards the issue. I really think we need like a summit level response, all hands on deck. And I don't know what the political will for that is, quite frankly, in the city right now. So I can't confidently say, but I do think it's possible. And I do think we have access to a lot of smart people. I think we have access to models. I know, Joe, that the many, regional and statewide organizations, MAPC and CHAPA, and several other housing. I know that I get the opportunity to, see what advocates for affordable housing are doing in other communities all around the state. And that's one of the ways that I learn more about the kinds of policies that people are trying. I think it's much more about finding the will than finding the way. There's lots of ways at this problem. Of course, they all require resources and commitment.
For sure, and that's, hopefully we can play some positive role in that. And I think to Anayo's point, one of the ways that we view our role is we think we can serve as an amplifier of some of the programs that do exist or the approaches that do exist. Obviously, hopefully we can fund some and do some sort of on our own, but we also could potentially be a bridge for residents to resources that they might not know, are available to them, that they can access, that can help them stay in their homes, to stay in their apartments, to stay in their community. I would love, Laura, if you have the time to stay on, but it would be great to get an update from Tom from the city side, from the Chief of Planning and Community Development, on two things. First off, the housing production plan, and I know that there's a request for funding, which we'll talk about, and we'll have to table until we have a quorum, but something that, we may participate in. And then also anything else, potentially relevant to our work that may have come across your plate that you want to share with us, Tom.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. And I guess starting with the housing production plan, I know we've talked about this. I think this is the third meeting now. The first meeting I sort of discussed in concept why we need a housing production plan. I'm actually, part of the impetus for this was hearing about the work of the Revere Housing Coalition, and everyone that put a lot of time and effort into that work was left thinking, well, what next? What can we do? And this is a really kind of actionable way that we can all work together to meet the needs of this housing crisis. So you've heard me talk about the housing production plan and why we need it. The last meeting I presented the scope, and this meeting I'm asking for money. But we can always table that until the next meeting. We have an outstanding and pending request to the city for our ARPA funding to cover the balance of the work, so there's certainly nothing urgent on our end. Certainly the crisis is urgent, but the other funding hasn't been secured yet. So we can certainly wait on that. Although I'm happy to take any questions now that you all have had a month to review the scope that I put together. And maybe I'll pause there for questions and then get to the rest of the updates after.
Yeah, I think my first question would be, we think about, so part of the scope of the request for the housing production plan also includes some consultancy for the Affordable Housing Trust and helping get us off the ground. And can you talk about, what we might be looking for in a consultant in terms of background experience and ways to help us with the actions of the trust?
Yeah, so the reason I wanted to look at that, I think the consultants that work in this world, housing policy world, I think there's a lot of overlap between the folks that put together housing production plans and those that might be able to provide this board with guidance as to how to build together sort of a, I'll call it an operating and a sustainability strategy, right? So you all are going to be working on developing your goals and, of course, your overarching mission statement. I would see this consultant as somebody who could work with you on taking those goals and making them actionable for the board, and ultimately then taking those actionable items and tying them to different funding sources. To your point, Inayo, of, we've got tons of different funding resources available for homeownership, for rental support, for municipalities to take on housing challenges, and how can we kind of put all the pieces together to help you guys get your actions accomplished with the various funding sources, local, state, and federal, that we have at offer. And then I think the other piece of it would be sort of a sustainability strategy for you all to think about how to take advantage of various streams of funding to have a sustainable source of funding to keep the board going over time. But that's also an open question. I'd be interested to hear what you guys feel you would most need from a consultant. I think it's still, that side I was much less confident in putting together the scope of, because ultimately it would be determined by you all what you think you need. I just know in our last conversation that was a discussion we had.
So again, thank you for that, and every time you come and provide great assistance, we learn so much more. I'm actually a big fan of rigid timelines or a framework of development. So to the extent to which a consultant can, or an advisor can work with us to say, by this particular date, these sorts of things should be established, whether it's a mission statement or whether it's, if we've decided on short-term goals, what are they? What are the specific delineations of those things? How are responsibilities going to be delegated? I'm a big fan of that. I think we've done quite a bit of sort of getting a broad strokes of things, but I'm kind of like a bean counter. I kind of like knowing, okay, this is, by this date, are we going to do something, and what can we expect? Or that's the mind frame that I like to.
Right, and I'm a bean counter too, and I'm one that often will only count my beans when somebody tells me I have to do so by this date. So I'm with you, and I think it is good to have, I think that's part of what putting together SMART goals is all about, right? That you have, they're time limited, and that it kind of incents us all to act. So that's certainly something I think these types of consultants would have worked with other Affordable Housing Trust Fund boards and hopefully have a good sense of kind of precedent and how long these things take. Sometimes they can take a long time. But yeah, I think timelines are smart, and we should definitely push to have some in the plan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. And I think just to provide quick, maybe feedback to what you put out there, which is what would be helpful, and be curious if you all agree. I think, frankly, what would be really helpful in terms of technical assistance would be, so we have some ideas that we've put out there for things that we want to do and want to carry out, and how they're going to look is to be determined. But in broad strokes, it's affordable, home ownership or rental opportunities, it's potential loan programs or emergency assistance programs. And frankly, sort of technical assistance on how to actually pull these off is something that would be, frankly, really beneficial and helpful. In terms of, for instance, any program that we do might have a certain eligibility screen, and how to effectively do that, in a way that is fair and equitable. Things that might involve a lottery system, what other communities have done to make sure those are fair and equitable. How to get these in front of people in a way that's equitable in different languages and to different communities. And then also for something like a loan program that may involve tracking of funds over time. I've heard a mix of, some communities do it through a bank, some do it just through a city account and track it internally. And really getting some technical assistance on how to actually kind of pull off programs that we're interested in, sort of where the rubber meets the road, I think was something that I'd be really interested in getting some help with.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing, oh, please, Leila, go ahead.
Okay, I have a question. The Governor Haley, she have a budget for housing for the all state. Can Revere be part of that, working with the project that the new governor have related with housing?
Certainly, and I think that would be kind of a goal here in the work to tie together your sort of vision, mission statement, goals with action items that could be funded in the state budget. And I'm certainly excited to hear the budget that's proposed with the Healy administration, because, and certainly with Lieutenant Governor Driscoll as well, somebody who has worked in gateway cities like ours for decades, and has a great understanding of what our needs are. So I think a lot of the budget submittals that we'll hopefully see from the State House will have a lot of impact on things that we can do here on the trust.
I think, to Tom's point, one of the things that I think we can most effectively do is a lot of these programs that exist out there that the state is ready to fund are in some sense competitive, in the sense that communities need to demonstrate that we sort of we're shovel ready in some ways, to use the infrastructure term. That if funding comes to us, we can effectively use it and accomplish some of the goals of what they're trying to do. And I think that's certainly part of what we're going to do internally, but it's also part of, I think, what we can do in collaboration with you through some technical assistance too, is how to position ourselves to take advantage of funds that become available. So don't know if anyone else has questions on this piece, but if not, would love to hear anything else that's on your mind, Tom.
Yeah, sure. So I'm sure everybody has heard about the MBTA communities, which basically is a requirement at the state level that all communities that either include or are adjacent to a rapid transit or commuter rail station have to come in compliance with a law that basically states you need to have a certain percentage of your city's developable land set aside for housing development by right, as opposed to by special permit. So the assumption being that developers can build in that area with our existing zoning. And housing development at a certain density of 15 acres or 15 units per acre. So one of the first steps in coming into compliance with this law was submitting an action plan to the state that basically lined out how we felt we were or were not in compliance, and if we were not in compliance, how we would seek to achieve compliance. So we submitted an application last week, an action plan to the state where we indicated that we believe we are in compliance with the law. And I'm told within about 10 days, but let's say a month just to be safe, we'll hear from the state as to whether or not we are compliant. If we are compliant, that really means there's no further action necessary. But if they do deem we are not in compliance, what we would have to do is ultimately change our zoning, with the support of the city council and the planning board, in order to support more by right housing development near our T stations. So I think we'll have better updates there at our next meeting of the trust, but there's the sort of top of the line requirements for the MBTA communities is really clear, but when you get into the guidelines, it's a bit murkier. So I'll be curious to see if we are in fact in compliance, but if not, I think it will be part of the housing production plan, certainly, but also discussions with you all ongoing as to how we can reform our zoning to better support housing development. And so that's a key update. Another related one at the state level in terms of different resources we have. One state program that we have not taken advantage of that I'm looking to pursue this year is to become a housing choice community. And basically, a housing choice community is a designation that you can receive if you have produced in the last 5 years 5% of your housing stock or 3% in a series of housing best practices that have been achieved. I think we are at the point where we've produced at least 5% of our housing stock in the last 5 years. What we need to do is collect a little bit of data in the next week or so as to if that's true. The data that's on the state website says that we've built 60 units of housing in the last 5 years, 60. And so I think there's probably a typo and some error somewhere along the way. We probably built 60 units last month, right?
Yeah. Not a statistician, but I'm gonna guess that one's probably inaccurate.
Yeah, so I feel pretty confident we've reached that 5% level, in which case I'd apply for us to get that designation. If we receive the designation, then we would be able to apply for housing choice community capital grants. And some of those grants could be things that might support the aims of the trust fund. So again, more of an FYI at this point, but just something to be mindful of as we're thinking about, how to make your goals actionable with funding.
And are there a few examples of communities that are housing choice communities that have been able to get funding for various things, and kind of what's that looked like?
Yeah, so there's quite a bit of the communities kind of within 495 are designated housing choice just because of the building boom that we've seen. I don't have particular examples of what communities have specifically received in terms of grants, but you can get grants related to planning and zoning support, which I don't think we'd need here because we have enough resources to fill those needs. We have resources and grants available for site prep. So if we feel like there is a site, whether municipally owned or otherwise, that might be appropriate for housing, we could actually seek funding to do feasibility studies, to put together architectural drawings and the like to kind of prep that site, or brownfields, if you have a site that has contamination that needs to be resolved before people can live there. You can actually get funding for capital projects on buildings or infrastructure. So a lot of communities have done, like water, sewer upgrades, because you often hear as the common complaint, as you're building more housing, we need to make sure we're supporting the underground infrastructure associated with it. So there's funding both to build new affordable buildings or build new housing units, but also to take care of the underground infrastructure. Funding's capped at about $300,000, so it's not enough to build a unit in and of itself, but it's certainly enough to, put together other resources to make a demonstrable impact. So those are my main updates this month. Hopefully, between the three of them, we'll have a lot of good things to talk about at our next meeting.
Fantastic. Any questions on any of this? Or comments, feedback? So the next item was to be a vote or some feedback on the request for funding. So this was on the public agenda as well as sent to everyone via email. But the request was for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board to allocate $7,500 towards the total cost of this project for consulting services for the city's housing production plan, as well as for some of the support for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. We won't be able to vote on that today, as we don't have a quorum. But, as we look towards it, I wanted to see if anyone had questions about it. I can just state from my standpoint, I'm very supportive of this. I think that an example of what we've talked about from the beginning, where it's a modest investment, but right now we have modest resources. And so we look at, what are really useful things we can do with that. And the other thing that I think would be really beneficial about supporting this is that it kind of gives us some buy-in to the housing production plan that the city's doing. Because I think that anything that we do is only going to be really effective if we work in conjunction with city partners, both within City Hall and with the City Council. And so any opportunity we have to do that, to show that partnership and to be, literally bought in, in addition to metaphorically bought in, is something that's really valuable. So when we do bring this forward for a vote, I'm certainly going to support it, and I hope others will as well. Does anyone else have any questions or comments or thoughts on that funding request or proposal before we shelve that for the next meeting? Yeah, and I'm also going to maybe look into the possibility, as it looks like we're going to have 2 new members, hopefully, ratified on Monday, and potentially we can do a special meeting, something, a Zoom meeting, and continue the progress that we've made, in recent meetings. So with that, Tom, I suppose I'll let you sit down.
Thank you all.
Unless you want to stand, we're happy to have you there.
I'll sit there.
All right, excellent. So another thing that was going to potentially be a vote was really kind of ratifying the goals document that we discussed. But I am going to just open it up for some conversation about it. And again, this is something that we'll shelve until the next meeting. But it seems like we sort of are generally aligned on these goals that we talked about. And we'll kind of ask for people's thoughts. But just to reiterate, we talked about, I'll just read from what we had as a draft. In recognition of both the wide variety of housing challenges faced in the city of Revere, as well as what we can realistically accomplish, we lay out these as formal goals. And those would be: 1, provide support for low-income, elderly, and disabled renters in Revere to prevent displacement of Revere residents who rent. 2, encourage and support first-time home buyers who are Revere residents looking to stay in the city through education, funding programs, and other resources. 3, provide support for low-income, elderly, and disabled homeowners in Revere who are struggling with the rising cost of homeownership. And 4, encourage the preservation and/or creation of deed-restricted affordable housing for residents at or below 80% of area median income through education and advocacy, as well as in the long run through directly supporting these efforts. So that's kind of what we had laid out. I think that we all agree that various pieces of that and various aspects of addressing these goals are kind of more short-term realistic versus long-term visions, based on what funds are made available to us. But before we get to the point where we sort of ratify this and formally list these as our goals, as guiding principles, I did want to see if you guys had feedback, if anyone that's here had feedback, or via Zoom, Laura obviously as well. So we'll turn it over to anyone who might wish to share anything.
This is like a draft from the mission statement, and I open to all opinions from you. Affordable quality housing is fundamental for a just and equitable society and is the foundation of success. We lead and collaborate with our community stakeholders to provide the creation and preservation of affordable housing and home ownership that meets the needs of low and moderate income residents. The goal of distributing affordable housing trust funds is to identify the housing needs of our workforce, reduce out migration for our families, minimize the displacement for our youth and fixed income seniors, and promote and finance the development of affordable rental and first-time home ownership housing consistent with the City of Revere Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
I appreciate that, Layla. And so that is what you emailed that out, I know, to the membership for review. And so I think that that's a great starting point. Anayo, I don't want to cut you off if you have anything to add to that. Yeah.
I like how specific our 4 points are, and I like the broad sort of theme that Layla mentioned, for sure.
Terrific. And so I think my suggestion in terms of next steps on this, obviously kind of the next step in theory today might have been to kind of formally establish those goals and work towards mission statement. I do think it would be in our best interest to make sure that, we have a lot of kind of balls in the air in a good way, where I think that there's some things the city's working on, there's some things that we're working on, that we can really start to make progress. And so I think it behooves us to, at some point between now and the next regularly scheduled meeting, set up a special meeting. We can just do it virtually, where we do just take the time to talk about the goals and the mission statement, because I think they're important, and deserve to have their own kind of time to talk through them. But then it would also be great to kind of get them down and get it going. So that way we can, reconvene here in a month and really have that background and be ready to start taking advantage of some of the opportunities that are available to us. So we can coordinate, on schedules for that, but I think that would be my recommendation in terms of next steps, if everyone would agree with that. Terrific. So with that, the last piece on the agenda would be if there's any public comment. I do see that we have Laura and Lorena who are kind enough to stay with us. So if either of you wishes to chime in or offer any feedback, questions, thoughts, would love to hear from you. I see Lorena has her digital hand up, so feel free to unmute.
Hi, Joe. Can everyone hear me? Yes? Oh,
Yes, we can hear you.
oh, okay. So I just wanted a little bit more clarity on how the board plans to operate. I know that from the November meeting with Shelley, she kind of explained the kind of role that a board can take. So I was wondering, she gave a few examples about whether a board will fundraise money and have the money sitting in account while reviewing applications and approving projects, or kind of being more of initiating and advocating for projects. And I think you also mentioned it before that the board also hopes to be a bridge with other community partners, public service agencies that also support affordable housing. So I also really recommend that kind of the role and how you plan to operate be included in the mission statement as well.
Thank you for that. Appreciate the feedback. So in terms of just quickly the answer to kind of the mechanical aspect of your question is, yes, there is an account that's set up under the city treasury, which Anayo is the treasurer, and he's been in touch about kind of oversight of that. But yeah, so the idea is that we would raise funds both from public and private sources, and they would be in that account, and then out of that account there would be so basically the money would then be allocated to different programs to carry out some of the stuff that we talked about, some of the ideas that were laid out in the November meeting. So that's the mechanical answer to your question. The more logistical answer to your question, so which of the strategies and which of the ideas we're going to really tackle and focus on, I think is still, frankly, to be determined. I think it's something that we need to continue to think about as we do this goal setting process. But I think you make a great point that how we operate and how we organize should be part of the sort of goal and mission statement conversation. So I hope that answers your question. And then I don't know if you want to add anything from your treasurer
Sure.
perspective.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for the question also. And as Joe mentioned, there is an account. A lot of what we do in terms of the financial reporting and accountability is guided by the city council as well as specific liaisons from the city. So we work with them in terms of on the structure of the account and providing public information in terms of the accounting. Your question about fundraising is interesting to me because that's one of the things I'd like to get involved with. And I think it's right now an all of the above strategy. There's public and private opportunities for that. That can include organizing events within the community to galvanize support for our different initiatives. Also, it could also include seeking grant assistance from state and local partners. So again, right now, since we are kind of in the beginning stages of the committee, we are looking at all kinds of opportunities to develop, get resources to help with our mission of expanding affordable housing. And so, yeah, we don't mutually exclude public or private. And again, to what Joe mentioned, as far as the mechanics of those, these are all guided by the specific goals we'll have in a short term. That's based off of some of the things that we were voting on we were discussed, or our larger themes that we discussed today, and that we'd hopefully ratify through vote soon. But it's really a short-term versus a long-term thing, and as soon as we get the specifics as to what our short-term goals are, it'll be easier to answer the more specific questions on how things are done and how things are delegated to the different members of the team.
Great, thank you. And I know that it's a little bit early on to have an answer yet, so I'm excited to see how the board rolls out.
Well, we appreciate your feedback and thoughts. I know that you have experience in this area, so it's great to have you, as part of these conversations for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other public comment or last thoughts or feedback or questions? Going once, going twice. All right, so with that, and does anyone have any other late agenda items that we didn't get to that you wish to add? So with that, I am going to, until March, when we have our next regularly scheduled meeting, but also hopefully in the interim, we'll have a special meeting to focus on the goals and mission statement. But until that time, we'll consider the meeting adjourned. Thank you.